if he is found guilty, he will go to prison for many, many years. He could be in prison for the rest of his life. I mean, this is a very serious criminal matter.
Earlier this week, rapper, producer and record executive Sean Combs, known as P Diddy, was arrested by agents in a federal sex trafficking case against him. He's been charged with racketeering, conspiracy and sex trafficking, with allegations dating back to 2008. And these detail charges involving creating a criminal enterprise, forcing men and women into sex, kidnapping, arson and bribery. P Diddy has pled not guilty but was denied bail and will remain detained behind bars until the trial begins. In a separate lawsuit filed last week, singer Dawn Rashad has accused P Diddy of sexual assault and inhumane treatment. Joining me now to discuss this is Ms. Rashad's attorney, Lisa Bloom. Lisa, thank you so much for your time today. Obviously, we know that P Diddy has been arrested in this ongoing investigation carried out by Homeland Security officials, but you filed a lawsuit on behalf of your client, Dawn Rashad, in a separate case. What is Ms. Rashad accusing P Diddy of?
Yes, we find it striking that the criminal case that was filed yesterday is so strikingly similar to the civil case that we filed a week ago. In that case that we filed, we alleged sex trafficking, sexual abuse, false imprisonment, forced labor, many of the same allegations that the U.S. government chose to file yesterday. And, you know, when we filed our case, some people said, wow, this is really shocking. It's extreme. It's hard to believe. And now we have the weight of the U.S. government really behind it, making very similar allegations.
So it was just a massive coincidence that a federal investigation was operating and then resulted in P Diddy actually being charged and arrested at the same time within days of your client making very similar allegations.
Well, you could look at it as a coincidence, or you could look at it as when you're telling the truth, there's a lot of consistency. And you know, Sean Combs had these parties that he called freak-offs that the U.S. government mentioned in its indictment yesterday. And at the parties, there's a lot of allegations of sexual abuse, sexual assault, people being drugged, people not being allowed to leave. We mentioned those parties as well in the complaint that we filed a week ago. So I think there are probably overlapping witnesses, overlapping evidence. The U.S. government has more evidence than we do because they were allowed to raid his homes about 6 months ago, both in Los Angeles and New York. They got his hard drives. They were able to tap his phones. And in fact, yesterday in the bail hearing where he was denied bail, the government mentioned our case and said that a witness who had spoken out against my client, Dawn Rashad, had been in close contact with Mr. Combs and his phone, I think 128 times in the 3 days between when we filed our complaint and when this witness spoke out against my client. And then after she spoke out, zero contacts. So it certainly looks like witness tampering. That was the case that the government made. But overall, I think the consistency between these two cases speaks volumes about the credibility of my client, Dawn Rashad.
And Lisa, Sean Combs has denied your client's accusations.
Okay, yes. I mean, he has. He also denied the allegations of Cassie Ventura, his former girlfriend, when she filed her case, essentially calling her a liar. And then that video, horrific video, was released of him beating her, kicking her when she was down in a hotel hallway. And he had to walk that back and do a sort of apology video where he said, oh, he just felt terrible about it. So, you know, you can take his denial for what it's worth.
Well, I want to get into that, Lisa, but just from your legal expertise, that you're right. Cassie Ventura, she filed a case against Sean Combs in November, and then that was settled the next day. That disturbing CCTV footage came out in May this year, but that case was settled. So from your legal standpoint, can Cassie Ventura now be used as a witness or come forward and testify in any way if she were to be brought out for this latest, your filing and then the latest federal investigation?
Yes. A civil settlement does not bar someone from testifying. And in fact, it's very common that somebody can be subpoenaed to testify, even if they reached a civil settlement, even if there's a non disclosure agreement, an NDA. And of course, that makes sense because you don't want private parties reaching agreements that prevent a witness from testifying. The only way that you can prove a case in court is through witnesses and evidence. So people like Don Rashad who file a case, we need witnesses. We need the ability to subpoena witnesses. Also, in the criminal case that the government filed yesterday, they don't name any victims. They refer to victim one, not naming her, but it sure looks like that victim one is Cassie Ventura. And Cassie is not commenting when the press has been reaching out to her. So all of that indicates to me that victim one is probably Cassie Ventura. And I suspect very strongly that she has told the government that she would testify.
And your client, Dawn Rashad, she alleged that she witnessed P Diddy abusing Cassie during their relationship. Can you elaborate that for me?
Yes, she does allege that in the complaint that we filed, that she on numerous occasions saw Cassie Ventura and other women being physically abused by Sean Combs. And my client, Dawn Rashad, tried to intervene. But the problem was that Sean Combs was so wealthy and so powerful and so encircled by enablers, people who were complicit, who we also have named in our lawsuit. And in the federal government, in their criminal case, also very similar to our case, said that there was a conspiracy of people around him who were protecting him. And I think the law has really evolved in recent years to say we're not just going to go after a predator, somebody who abuses women. We're also going to go after people who are complicit. For example, I represented 11 women against Jeffrey Epstein, a notorious predator. And then there was a case against Ghislaine Maxwell and a case against a bank that was funding his criminal enterprise. And those have all been successful so that the victims could have recourse, not just against the predator, but against people around them who are complicit and who help them with their criminal enterprise.
And within the lawsuit, Dawn Rashad, your client, she alleges that when she would try and, stand up for Cassie Ventura in those moments of domestic violence, or tell Cassie that she should leave her relationship of 10 years with Sean Combs, she was retaliated against. Can you walk me through what happened there?
Yes, retaliated against, and one of her allegations is that she was not paid properly for the work that she was doing. She's a singer, that's when you're starting out as a musician, you typically have very little money. And so being able to be attached to a major producer like Sean Combs is a huge career break. I mean, thousands of people tried out for the show, making the band. Dawn Rashad was selected. And then of that group, a large group also wanted to be in the band that became Danity Kane. Dawn Rashad was selected. And so to get on the bad side of somebody like P. Diddy could mean the end of your career. And similarly, again, in the case that the US government filed, they alleged forced labor. They alleged economic exploitation. Again, really mirroring the complaint that we filed.
After all these years, Lisa, what made Dawn want to come forward now?
So we know now that it takes women time to come forward with allegations of sexual abuse. If somebody steals your purse on the street and runs off, you're going to call the police right away. But if somebody that you work with, that you care about, who has befriended you, who your career rests on, takes advantage of you, you're not going to come forward immediately. You're going to hope that it goes away. You're going to hope that he's going to stop. And we've seen this over and over again, haven't we? And the psychological literature is very clear that it can take victims years, decades sometimes. Sometimes people go to their graves with these types of secrets. So it takes time for somebody to be strong enough, to be brave enough, to be at a place in their career where they can stand on their own 2 feet. Dawn Rashad is a very successful singer now in her own right. She has critically acclaimed albums. She's about to go out on tour. The last thing she wants is a sexual abuse allegation against Sean Combs. But she was very inspired by Cassie Ventura coming forward and the complaint that she filed. And I often see, I've been doing these cases for decades, women will put up with a lot in our own lives. But when we see another woman standing up and being ridiculed as Cassie Ventura was by Sean Combs's team, women will stand with other women and say, no, I'm going to lend my voice because I saw things. I experienced things myself. And that's what she's doing. And I salute her for it.
Yeah, and would you expect more women to be coming forward when the trial begins, Lisa?
I do expect more to come forward. And in fact, I urge anyone who is a witness or who has evidence of any kind against Sean Combs to please contact me or contact the FBI, because this is still, we are the underdogs in this case. Mr. Combs is very wealthy and powerful. Now is the time to stand up, stand with the women who are brave enough to come forward. That's the only way that we can get justice.
And it does seem that he's throwing everything at this case, Lisa. You know, he offered up $50 million to be granted bail, which was denied. And so
Yeah.
we can see that he will be, doing everything he can to be found innocent. But if he is found guilty, what's the likelihood that P Diddy will be facing jail time?
Oh, it's very high. If he is found guilty, he will go to prison for many, many years. Of the three charges against him, one of them has a 20-year sentence, another has a 20-year sentence, another has a 10-year sentence. And then there are aggravating factors. He could be in prison for the rest of his life. I mean, this is a very serious criminal matter.
You mentioned before, Lisa, that you represented multiple victims of Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking ring. Are you seeing any similarities between these cases, especially when you see that separate lawsuit detailing P. Diddy having a manipulator-in-chief, Christina Crowham, a similar vibe to Ghislaine Maxwell?
So that's a great question. And yes, these accused predators, in the case of Diddy, do not operate alone, right? They always operate with a lot of people around them who are enablers, who are complicit. And we often see, I'm sorry to say, women like Ghislaine Maxwell, because women will trust other women. We might be wary of men. We might be a little bit careful about being alone with somebody if they're a man. But if it's a woman, well, okay, I feel a little bit more comfortable. So anyone who is complicit, who helped Sean Combs, should be very concerned right now. That's for sure.
Lisa Bloom, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.